Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, and our ongoing study in the literary masterpiece by Reine, the First Sons and Lost Daughters, Volume 2 of the Pioneer Ranch Saga trilogy. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at spiritual consciousness. That's going to enter into the discussion now. But before we get to that area of spiritual light, we've got to deal with Gideon. So we have to start out in the dark. Let's go to block 1 and get started. Gideon, the sun on the fringe. Gideon arrived for the party, parked where he was instructed not to park. He spoke with rudeness, even toward his own mother, and he spoke in an uncaring way about the ranch help, Tansy. But Peyton is a mother with sternness. She ordered Gideon to move his car, clean his mess, carry his own bag into the house. She also ordered Gideon to change his language and speak with care, speak with respect. She noted that her son was devoid of values, a complete lack of humility. Power, not love, was Gideon's unfortunate mindset. Adler arrives and instructs his son to be respectful toward his mother's desire for order. Peyton reminded Adler that Bryce and Gideon were a bad match together, that inviting Gideon was not a good idea. Trouble would most assuredly erupt. She could feel it. The two just didn't mix. Adler said that he had talked to Gideon, but initially here it doesn't look like it did much good because Gideon was rude right from the outset. Let's go on to block 2. We look at the pre-veterinary program and a budding romance. Bryce is going to study veterinary science at Berkeley. William presents Bryce with a graduation gift, a fennec fox pup in furry white. Bryce calls it the perfect gift. William tells her, "You get to name it, sweetheart." This is the first time that Peyton had heard William call Bryce sweetheart. Remembering solace and fading romance, William played with his bracelet that Bryce got him for his 21st birthday. Now, last lesson I said that was from his mother, but no, it was from Bryce. Bryce got him the bracelet for his 21st birthday. Peyton reflected back to the time when she was gifted a fennec fox from Adler, which she named Solace. But she kind of wondered within herself if maybe their love and solace for each other, maybe it's faded somewhat. Myriad, that which is beyond measure. Bryce chooses to name the fox Myriad because William's love and affection toward her is immeasurable. William, Bryce, and Ricky then exit the party and venture into Santa Fe. Peyton cuddles up with the little fox pup and replays past memories when she was gifted the same thing from Adler. She takes a little bit of a journey back in memory. A time for contemplating possible new resolutions. Peyton and a clean-shaven Adler lay in bed together, looking out through the large windows toward the looming full moon, while they listen to the distant sound of horned owls. Peyton brings up the idea of a need to generate additional income for the ranch. perhaps a public museum. She says that Hanovi has carried on the native culture that had been represented by her mother, Harlow, years ago. Adler's kind of depressed about the idea. He doesn't like the idea of public crowds on the ranch property. Is this about economics or preservation of one's past culture? But we can understand the conflict here. Adler's not into public crowds on the ranch. Let's go to block 3 and take a look at what this museum might be. And here's what we're going to realize, that, you know what, I mean, and I'm not talking about just this novel, but if you just think about it for a moment, what does a museum of art represent? It represents the self-consciousness of the artists who display work within it. You have all these microcosms of self-conscious worldviews. I mean, you think about it. When you look at a work of art, and I'm a big fan of religious art, and I have copies of Rembrandt, of Da Vinci, and many others, but I love religious art. But when I look at, say, Rembrandt's painting of St. Peter in prison, like all of Rembrandt's paintings, they're dark, and then the image emerges in this little glimpse of light. And you've got Peter, the light focused on Peter in prison, and next to him on the ground are a set of keys. And they're symbolic, of course. They represent the fact that Peter has the keys to the kingdom. And Rembrandt implemented that self-conscious awareness in the painting with the symbolic keys on a ring on the ground next to Peter in prison. And it's that way with Caravaggio, the Entombment, Frederick Church, Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, Da Vinci's Christ, Savior of the World. They're all reflections of the artist's self-conscious awareness. And so it applies to all museums, but this museum that Peyton's thinking about, away from the mansion, but away from the ranch house, but still on the property, but it'll include Harlow's paintings, which are her self-conscious reflection on her spiritual heritage. Hanovi is a spiritual painter already, and his paintings reflect spiritual self-consciousness. And what did we discover when we studied the Gospel of Mark? Spiritual self-consciousness has a very specific name. The second half of the Gospel of Mark was dedicated to the acquisition and the teaching of noesis, 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 spiritual self-consciousness. And now we know that we have to see how this develops, how it unfolds, because initially Adler's not a big fan of it, but if it does come to fruition, we're looking at a place where the self-conscious recognition and awareness of the history of Pioneer Ranch will be represented and on display in the very public museum on Pioneer Ranch. So it has a deeper meaning to it. It's very, very powerful. Let's go on now. Let's take a look at Block 3. Okay. Museum, a concrete version of numinous consciousness. Peyton describes the museum venture as a preserving a legacy. the legacy of spiritual consciousness. It's a way of ensuring the future for her children. There's an eschatological element to this desire of hers, ensuring the eschatological future. Adler asked about his own future. Yes, will Peyton spend more time at the ranch and less time in California then? And Peyton spurs up very defensively. Does everything have to be conditional? Now we kind of notice that this phase of their relationship has its own set of challenges, like all relationships eventually do. Adler asks, do you ever miss me at all? Now Peyton answers, of course she does, but the tension is there, and that's not an unusual thing to realize. I think this is an honest narrative that couples, even at this mature age for Adler and for Peyton, they have this tension like it's the tension of a fading romance. Things have become less romantic and more utilitarian, and neither one of them like it, but they of course still love each other deeply, but we're looking at an honest depiction here, an honest narrative from Reine, and I appreciate that. Spiritual consciousness made concrete must ensure and even possibly heal the next eschatological moment. Okay, let's take a look at this. Peyton strokes and reads the map of wrinkles in Adler's face. Will he do the same for her? Will he consume her intimately but preserve her unique identity? Peyton next prepares the dining room for Bryce's celebratory lunch. Gideon enters, or do we say Damien, the Antichrist, enters, blows out the candles, and then says they stink like the candles at Mass. He also says that he does not want to sit next to Father Gabriel. Peyton describes Father Gabriel as wise, kind, and generous with his time, and he blesses the estate. Gideon hates him. Hanovi arrives, which causes Gabriel to complain all the more. Damien emerges right on schedule. Tansy rushes to serve Hanovi his favorite tea. I love that. I love it. The painting Peyton at 9 still hangs over the fireplace mantel. Hanovi's guest couple that he brought with him say that they have 3 of Harlow's paintings and would like some art restoration done by Peyton if at all possible. They already strike up kind of a friendship immediately. The chapter ends with eternal truth from Scarborough. Peyton recalls Scarborough saying, "We only own what we cultivate within ourselves." Very, very true. We only own what we cultivate within ourselves. We only participate in spiritual consciousness as we cultivate that spiritual consciousness within ourselves. Harlow did it through her painting. Peyton does it currently through her painting. Hanovi also cultivates it, implements it, cultivates it, sustains it through his own painting. Possibly, we might have an exhibition of those paintings together and a museum, a public museum, on the Pioneer Ranch property. We'll have to see how this develops as we go. But what I love from Reine, we get a spiritual dimension to the narrative. Like I said, she reminds me of Ingmar Bergman. He always had a deep spiritual dimension to his film and to his transcripts. for his film. His father was a minister, and I see Samar Reine very much the same way that I follow Ingmar Bergman. But we have a very powerful chapter 2 here, and now we get a little bit of development toward a possible spiritual element to the narrative. We still have to deal with Gideon, though. That's going to wrap up chapter 2. Next lesson we will pick up with chapter 3.